Hello, welcome to this preset deep dive for the Arturia CS-80V. And, well, first of all, let's hear the sound. When I was having a look at this sound to try to figure out how it was built, it occurred to me that I haven't said something that's absolutely vital to bear in mind. Whenever deconstructing a sound on the CS-80, start with the multimode page. It's absolutely essential. I can't stress it highly enough. Start with this page. And this is a perfect illustration of why and why it's not come up before. This sound is two patches split over two zones, which means that when we play a note, we're hearing something coming out of zone 2 and something coming out of zone 1, two separate sounds at the same time. So all of these sliders only ever correspond to one of those two patches at any given time. So a patch sits inside a zone, and we've got zone 1, patch 1, zone 2, patch 2. So the terms are almost interchangeable. Really, the zone is about what MIDI channel it's talking on, what keyboard spread it has, and the patch is the sound. But more often than not, they actually marry together. Here, we are seeing the settings for patch number 1. If we click the edit button, all these buttons and sliders change. And so when you're editing a sound, you have to know which patch you're editing in order for your ears and eyes to actually have any kind of relationship with each other. So start with multimode. So given that, let's figure out what's going on. Well, we've clearly got an arpeggio sat over the top of a pad. But if we're going to deconstruct a sound, that's going to be incredibly difficult to do. So just for now, we're going to take zone 2 out of the equation by making its keyboard range effectively nothing. So now you see that the lights aren't lighting when I play any of these keys, because only C0 would actually fire this patch over here. So now we can hear this arpeggio, and we can see that we're in rotate mode, which means every time we play a note, we'll move on to the next voice. And we also know that we have four note polyphony. So if I play a 3-note chord, you can hear the arpeggiator playing an up for 1 octave repeated twice. Diddly 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 diddly. And we could do 4 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So every one of those lights is corresponding to one of those 4 notes that's being played. We wouldn't be able to play 5 notes simultaneously. Well, we can hold 5 notes down simultaneously. But the synth itself is only ever actually generating 4 voices for that zone at any given time. So let's have a look at some of the settings. While we're here in multimode, we might as well have a bit of a poke around, see what's going on. So all of the transposes are set to 0, and you get this very, very slight detune on each of the notes. Just gives you a little bit of colour, but because it's in arpeggiator mode, you're not really going to hear that in with a vengeance. All of the volumes are normal, but pan is pretty dramatic. There we've got panned hard left, panned hard right, panned hard left, and panned hard right. So as we play each of these notes, it's going to bounce between our ears. We'll be able to hear that much more easily if we slow it right down. So we're currently at 138 milliseconds. Left ear, right ear, left ear, right ear. Now we're still getting some crossover because we've got delay bounce, which is a stereo delay. So it's not absolutely hard in left and right, but it is definitely panning, and that's what we're getting. let's just throw that preset away and get back to square one. In fact, in order to not have to do that too many times, take zone 2 back out of the equation, save the preset as test. Now I can get back there very quickly if I want. Okay, let's deconstruct the actual sound. We don't have very much more interesting to see in the multimode, so let's turn the modulation page on and we can, yes, there's stuff going on over here. And again, so that we can pick out a little bit more clearly what's going on, I'm just going to slow the arpeggiator down. We can hear this pulsing thing going on. This is the LFO. LFO1 is a sawtooth shape, and it's cycling very quickly, 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of thing, and it's assigned to the high pass 1 cutoff filter. So if I just disengage this for a moment, we've disabled that element of the sound. Now if I manually alter the high pass 1 cutoff filter, you get that kind of thing. So that's what the LFO is doing cyclically, or rampily if you like. Let's make it extreme, all the way up. And now the high pass filter is going this kind of business. It's kind of unpleasant. There you go. You can hear it now. But the high pass filter itself has a little bit more of a complex relationship than just that. And this is the subtlety of this instrument. You can't just look at one thing and think, oh, that's what that's doing. Particularly when you're dealing with modulation matrices like this, you need to consider all of these relationships together. And don't forget, everything that we're talking about here is only for zone 1. We've thrown an entire half of the sound away. So let's make no presumptions about what any individual parameter in the synth is doing. We can only hear what it's doing at the time and then build up a composite picture. Get back to test again. So the high pass 1 filter, the resonance of it is being affected by this envelope over here. So we have a very quick attack, a longer delay. I've given up with these timings. It's not 184 milliseconds. I don't know what it is, but there's something going on. The envelope is actually decaying for longer than that. So that shape is being applied. Don't forget, it's just a graph, it's just a wave shape, and it's being applied to the high pass 1 resonance slider, which is this thing here. So if I turn this off, there's your resonance. Okay, let's bring it back in. I'm going to really crank this dial up and see what that envelope has the potential to do with the resonance. Pretty dramatic. And that's just at one filter setting. If I change the start point of the cutoff, we'll get a different set of dramatic sounds. Isn't that fantastic? Now imagine having that on a keyboard slider and that you can do this stuff real time. Now we've got a genuine performance instrument. Fantastic. Back to the bass sound. So each time, don't forget, each time I'm clicking that button, I'm just throwing away the whole of zone 2 and getting back to the absolutely standard stock zone 1. Okay, we're still dealing with high pass 1, so you need to decide which bits of the synth you're going to look at any given time. It's each preset has its own requirements, its own demands, and so we're currently looking at the high pass 1 filter. And so let's keep on going. We've got a high pass 1 cut on the aftertouch here. Let's see what that does. Now, when I press the key then, did you hear the frequency go up? It's because we're also patched in over here. So I'm just going to turn that effect off for the moment. There's not much change to be had there. Let's really crank it up. Yeah, it's bringing in those higher frequencies. That's down. That's up. It's very subtle. Back to our bass sound. We'll just sidestep briefly from high pass 1 over onto VCO2 because we were just talking about aftertouch. So now I'll turn that off, double click. You hear that gurgling thing? So what's VCO2 frequency doing? Let's have a look at that. So here is the second oscillator, and this is VCO2. And now when I press the aftertouch down, you can hear it. Still playing the arpeggio in the background. And there's the D-tune. Now then, this is a weird one. LFO2, which is a sine wave oscillating at 10 Hz, is feeding into the speed of LFO1 reasonably vigorously. First of all, let's take the sound away. And then bring lots of it in. That chatter. So what's that doing? Well, if we take it away again and we go over to LFO1's speed, which is the thing that's actually being modulated, it's currently at 2.4. There it is. And that's what's happening when it's being sped up by LFO2. You're getting that chatter. Okay, that's that done. Stick that in the memory bank. Back to our bass sound. Now let's have a look at the tones themselves. And at this point, you know, when we're just dealing with the oscillators, we should be reasonably familiar with what's going on. So over here we've got, there's no square wave. This button's set to triangle mode. So we've got a triangle and a sine wave. Don't forget, sine wave over here, kind of out of place, but doing its thing. Those two things. We go over to just oscillator 1. So there's just the sine wave. And there's just the triangle. And we've got the high pass filter engaged. We've already heard the effect that that's having on the sound. And our relatively straightforward envelope, no initial level. Everything else is, we don't need to dwell too much on that. So nothing else dramatic on oscillator 1. Over on oscillator 2. This is a sawtooth being mixed with a sine. There's the saw on its own. There's the sine on its own. This time we've got a low pass filter engaged on this side, so just these sliders. That's where we're getting the depth from, with this being set nice and low. And pretty straightforward stuff on the rest of the filter and envelope settings. Those two are mixed together. Got a tremolo engaged, having quite a dramatic effect on the sound. And obviously the delay ping-ponging backwards and forwards. So that's zone 1. That's half of the sound done. Okay, so over to sound number 2, zone 2, which means we're going to rebuild our standard preset. And this is where you can fall down a right old rabbit hole. Make sure you click Edit Zone 2, because there's no point messing with the sliders on Zone 1 if you're listening to Zone 2. It'll catch you out, I guarantee it. So we've engaged Zone 2 now. Let's have a quick look over here, see what's going on. Nothing on the transpose. Detunes are all set the same, but we do have differences in volume, which means each time you play, if you play a 3-note chord, depending on which 3 voices it uses, you're going to get different volumes between them. Not something that I'm a huge fan of, because it's completely impossible to actually know which voice it's going to come out of. And varying volume in that way seems a little odd to me, but there you are. If you want to use that creatively, then it's definitely an option. So here we are in the Modulation Matrix for Zone 2, and you can see it's different. Every zone has its own mod matrix. There's no point setting up when we were interacting with the high pass 1 filter before, that was purely for the arpeggio to get those pew, 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 pew. That would have no context if you were dealing with a pad that we are now. And so we have our own mod matrix for every patch. So I think I said zone. It's the patches that the mod matrix works on. So now this sound is being affected by these settings, and you can see there are far fewer of them. In fact, we've only got 2. We've got the modulation wheel set to the low pass 2 cutoff, and we've also got LFO1 set to LP2 cut. But if you look at LFO1, the speed is right down as absolutely low as possible. So this is, over a vast expanse of time would do something, but because all of the other sliders are set to 0 as well, this is an odd one. It's basically another way of just changing the low pass 2 cutoff, which is down here. So I'm not altogether sure why they've mapped it to LFO1. A little odd, I will admit. The wheel does the same kind of thing. Down, and then we slide the wheel up, or turn the wheel up, and back down again. Really, really simple stuff. So this is the much simpler side of the sound. We've got a low pass filter set. And you can see very straightforward envelopes, a little bit of initial level to take it down below, and then we come up to the high point basically, and then we decay away back down to this again. So listen to all of oscillator 1. Very Vangelis. Down over in oscillator 2. Again, we've got another LPF set. And this is the one that's being modulated by the wheel. No arpeggiator obviously in zone 2. Again, we've got the tremolo and delay, they are keyboard wide. And finally, we bring both sounds back together again to get the composite effect. That is a beautiful and complex sound. What an instrument. Oh, isn't it just magnificent? So there you go. That's how to build multi-zone sounds and not lose yourself in the mire of knobs and twiddles that this thing has. Don't forget the edit buttons. You see, when you first load a patch, all 8 edit buttons are lit. There's some kind of bug in the constructor, I think. It shouldn't be that way. It should only be 4 of the buttons lit. So I'm not sure. I can only presume that's a bug. So just beware, don't get caught out by that. You're never editing both patches at the same time. It's not possible. These sliders are in different places for those different sounds. It makes no sense. So I would presume that whenever you load a patch in by default, it's not lit all 8 buttons now. So there's something weird going on there. I'm not sure what. So that's that for this preset deep dive. Thanks very much for watching. Hope to see you next time.